Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and I have a t-shirt that says your mission, your excuses. And your mission is in really big letters and it's squishing out your excuses. And this shirt comes from my friend Leavell, who is a wrestling coach, marketing automation specialist, and a variety of other things. He was episode number 44 on Redbeard Radio, from the wrestling mat to the laptop, what makes a great coach. Well, today we have Dee back on the show to talk about inspiration, how to inspire yourself, how to change your environment to inspire yourself, and how he's taken the inspiration project he's been working on for a while to the next level. Dee, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's a blessing, and I'm truly thankful for this opportunity to be back on your show, Brian.
I'm happy to have you here. One of my favorite phrases, which I've not done yet, but I've thought about getting put up on a wall, and I have just written it on paper, but they make fancy versions now, is "all your excuses are lies" by Jocko. And it's one of his great phrases that just helps focus me on, yes, I have excuses, and no, they aren't real. And one of the things I like about when I wear the shirt I got from you, "Your mission is bigger than your excuses," is it doesn't just look at, your excuses are all lies, but it says, what's your mission? It reminds you that whatever the mission is. And so it just reminds me, I need to go remember who I am, in a sense, and then deal with my excuses from that position of power of, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Heck yeah.
So I like just having that in my life. But you've expanded from beyond that into some other phrases and other ways to inspire people. Can you share with us one of those other things you've added to your lineup?
Yeah, so I'd like to share the one that I recently have launched, and it's cut the rope.
What does that mean?
3 simple words, cut the rope. So to me, and the meaning behind it is, you think of this rope, you have this amazing but simple tool. The rope can allow you to do, like, it enhances your abilities at times. You throw if it's something too far away, you can, like a tree, like you reach up, think of like a tree. Let's build this image here. We have a tree that we can't reach, and we want to pull that branch down. But if I go grab a rope, I'm able to loop that rope around that branch and pull that branch closer to me, allowing me to get to that branch. Or you think about, or you could pull yourself to something from another spot. But so we think we have this rope that's a great tool that allows us to enhance our abilities, to improve us, to optimize us. But when you think of it in another sense, the rope is only good so far. At some point, the rope starts to hinder you and keep you from getting where you want to go. So that then you take the 3 words I just said, cut the rope. So at some point you have to cut the rope. So sometimes, like, the rope can help you get there, but it also prevents you from going where you want to go. So the rope can be like excuses, it could be friends, it could be roadblocks, it could be disbelief, and like something, well, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy. But sometimes you just got to cut the rope. You got to cut your excuses. You got to cut what's holding you back. So that's where I've got the phrase "cut the rope."
Have you watched the movie Free Solo?
No, I haven't. No, hold on. Yes, I have. That's where the guy.
Alex Honnold.
Yes.
Climbed Half Dome with no rope. It's multiple thousand feet of vertical elevation gain, and he was the first person to do it. And everyone thought this is clearly impossible. But Alex Honnold is just a very unusual human with a very unusual level of focus and dedication. And when you're saying cut the rope, I'm a mountain climber, so I think about what the rope does for you on the mountain, where there is a sense of safety and security that comes from being on a rope, which is real. That if you're rock climbing and you slip, the rope is what keeps you from dying. So it's a very real thing. But it can also trap you. I was once climbing on a training wall, so not actually out in the wild. And I was trying to get up to the top of this wall. And the particular path I was taking, the literal rope was attached directly above this one path, but then the path sort of headed off. And I'm not explaining it very well. If you're not a rock climber, this might not make much sense. But I ended up trying to get to the top of this wall, not directly underneath the rope, which, if that was the case, if I fell, I'd fall straight down, but off to the side of the rope by a couple of feet. Well, I went for a handhold and I slipped. I could probably blame the rain. That's my excuse, whatever. But I slipped. And because I was off to a few feet from the side of where the rope was attached, I didn't just fall straight down, right? I barn doored, which is where you swing out from the wall and you're now dangling midair, but you have momentum, D. And what happens when you hit the other side of the wall? You hit hard.
Hard.
And yes, the rope keeps you safe, but it also controls you. And
Yep.
it makes it so that sometimes, like, you gotta, okay, you're now flying against the other side of the rock wall, and which part of your body you're gonna protect as you're about to hit this sharp thing. It's not great. So it can limit us, even as it's also the safety thing, which I like. I like being safe, but
Mm-hmm.
also I think about, I was on Mount Rainier a couple of years ago, and it was October, November, snowing out, a lot of snow on the ground, and the snow was windy, so it was the sharp icicle pricks. And I was shirtless out there. I was in tennis shoes, um, wool long john kind of thing, shorts, and a wool cap and wool gloves, but no shirt. And it was, I don't know, in the 30s out, 20s out, not quite sure. And people just stared at me. But I was there practicing my cold exposure training and increasing my health and my brown fat content by exposing myself to a significant cold while doing some specific breathing exercises to keep myself warm despite being in a very cold environment. And I remember, of all the folks who looked at me like I was a crazy person, which fair enough for them, I stopped for some folks, and this one guy said, I would be so cold if I wasn't wearing this jacket. And he's looking at me, who's shirtless, and stopped in the snowy wind talking to me. And I look at him and I say, I would be so cold if I was wearing that jacket. And of course, he gives me a look like I'm a crazy person. Admittedly, I'm shirtless on Mount Rainier. But I say to him, that jacket is telling your body that you don't need to do any work. So your body isn't trying to keep you warm. So of course you're cold. Whereas I'm over here sort of hyperventilating on purpose in a very controlled fashion. And my body knows it needs to be warm. I'm telling it through how I'm breathing. I'm telling it through the fact that snow is hitting my body right now, my bare skin. I'm telling it through all these things. So our bodies were in completely different states. And it's curious when you say cut the rope, that just brings to mind the whole, we insulate ourselves from our environment.
Yep.
I have a mountaineering parka in my closet right here in my office where, yeah, I've worn that at the top of Mount Rainier, because I'm a mountain climber, wonderful. But there's times, Steve, where I've worn that just for going for a walk around the neighborhood because it's cold out. I don't want to be cold. So I grab my beefiest jacket, which is designed for summiting a mountain, and I wear it for walking down the street because I'm a creature of comfort.
Yep. Yeah, we all are.
Tell me about cutting the rope as it relates to wrestling. Now you lead the wrestling program at your high school there, and I bet you have some really interesting ways of explaining that concept to your students.
Yeah. So how I relate that concept with my wrestlers. Think of it like this. I've got a wrestler who's had success with this particular move that's kind of gotten him to a certain point. But I know, as his coach, I know, like, hey, that if he wants to take his wrestling to the next level, that he's gotta develop, he's gotta move on, he's gotta train, he's gotta do something else, he's gotta develop another move
Mm.
to add to his arsenal. So I've got to, hey, sorry, buddy, but you got to cut the rope with that move, and you got to go. You got to create another path, another avenue that you can score on with another move, because other good coaches are just going to scout that, and they're going to tell their guys, hey, just look for this, move this
Hmm.
leg, switch stance. Um, and then another thing is, like, just with their eating habits. They find comfort in those comfort foods, like their snacks, their sodas, their their chips and things like that. That for a while that they were able to get away with it, but at some point they've got to cut that out. They got to refine their diet. They got to optimize their diet and their nutrition, and having those things in their body and in their system isn't optimizing their body. I give them an analogy of a Lamborghini. Like,
Hmm.
their body is a Lamborghini. Everybody loves fast cars. Everybody loves nice sports cars. And I always ask them, I was like, hey, what type of gas do you put in a Lamborghini? And they're like, well, you put the premium gas and you put that good gas. And I was like, yeah, you don't put unleaded gas in a Lamborghini. You don't put the same gas that your mom puts in her car in a Lamborghini. I was like, what happens when you put that unleaded in a Lamborghini? They're like, well, it doesn't run right. It doesn't go fast. Like, yeah. And think about your body. If you put unleaded gas in your body, those comfort foods, your body's not going to run the way it should run. Those are two ways that I use that. And then, then another one is, with friends. Growing up, my mom and my grandma would tell me all the time, like, hey, choose your friends wisely. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you talking about? Like, I'm my own person. I control my own actions and this and that. Just because I hang with this person doesn't matter, doesn't affect me. But as the older I get, I look back on that statement and I'm like, wow, if I would have just listened then, and I wasn't like I got into tons of crazy trouble or anything, but I tell our guys, sometimes you just got to cut the friends, even if they're a good friend, or even if you think they're a good friend, they're doing the good things, but they might not be doing good things, but if they're telling you bad things, if they're telling you negative things, and we're constantly preaching positive things into your mind and into you, eventually and if you're around them more than you're around us, you're gonna believe more of those negative things and those positive things that we're telling you. So you got to cut that out.
Last year, I went and stayed off Twitter for a whole month, and
Hmm.
I cut out that influence, at least direct influence from my life. And it was interesting to look at how my mindset changed because I was not being exposed to so much outrage and controversy. I just had a different, because what was important when I wasn't being fed that constant stimulus of anger
Yeah.
and problems and violence. There's so much violence if you look on Twitter or any social media. If you're looking for it, right? It's everywhere. But the reality is, how much violence have I seen with my own eyes in life? Actual anger, violence. Oh man, it's almost zero. That's the real world. For me, anyways. But then I go on Twitter and I go fill my world with riot violence or car crashes or whatever kind of strife there is anywhere in the world. And yeah, that definitely, like you're saying with the Lamborghini, that affects my ability to show up in the way that I want to show up in the world.
Yep.
So we have cut the rope. What's one of the other big ideas you're working with?
The next big idea that I'm working with is back to the basics.
Hmm.
That and it's cool because and it's probably like one of my favorite designs, because I was like, I want this kind of like retro feel because I'm like, it's going back to the basics. And I had like this just like Back to the Future. When I wrote it down, I was like, I had this Back to the Future uh thought and like design look in my head. But it turned out really, really good. And I've got like this, I call it like the Miami Vice theme because it's like that bluish, pinkish, like that combination there. Um, on it, and it looks freaking phenomenal. But with that, like, it's just a constant reminder of like, hey, the basics win. Like, in order for you to get to the next level, you have to have a great foundation. You have a solid foundation, and you might get to the next level without a solid foundation, but you'll get exposed very quickly. And that's in anything. That's in wrestling. That's in life. That's in your business. That's in your relationship. That's in your spirituality, your religion, and it's just like a constant reminder, like, hey, no matter how complicated things get, how bad things get, go back to the basics. Go back to what got you there.
When I started sword fighting, there was the three basic moves we learned. A flat snap, so you're basically hitting someone in the head with your stick because you're using sticks instead of swords. And then there was a backhand where you hit them in the back of the head. And then there was this thing called the wrap where you sort of swing around, you end up hitting them in the back, even though you're still in front of them. And it's crazy and weird. My teacher said, okay, so just go practice the flat snap, the most basic shot. You go practice it 500 times or 1,000 times. And he had this relentless focus on just learn these three things
Mm-hmm.
and understand that the first two, you're going to feel them pretty soon within like the first 5 minutes. You can feel if you're doing it right. But this third one, the rap, it's going to take you years. And I'm not sure I actually believed him when I first heard that. And I struggled with this one of the three basic movements for years. And then eventually I got it. I thought, oh, finally I got it. I'm good. And then, of course, what happened the next time I tried to do the rap, didn't do it right. No power. Hurt my elbow. Oh man. Nope. Not a hero. I don't have it. I had it once. And it took years more until I could almost every time deliver a proper rap. This idea, though, that it would take me 5 years to get good at one of the three most basic movements, That's it's just a lot of humility that I've not always had in my life.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I have some of it now. Well, I'll tell you, I'm actually on the beginning of my jujitsu journey. And so the teacher says, do this basic thing. And I said, got it. Yep. Because I've had a decade of sword fighting experience to realize like the basics is everything. And there's no way I'll ever be above practicing the most basic role or the most basic anything in jujitsu. But it took me a decade of sword fighting and a decade of playing soccer and a decade of playing trombone, all these things to get me to the place where I can actually sit with the, why, yes, doing the most basic thing 1,000 times. I'll get right on it. Yep.
It reminds me of like this conversation reminds me of the book Chop Wood Carry Water. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if you read that or not, but
I know the phrase. I've used that phrase. The whole, and also there's a before, before enlightenment, carry water. After enlightenment, carry water. That's just,
mhm.
and the more experts I talk to in really any field, it just keeps on coming back to, yeah, yeah, they're experts because they're talented. That does exist, but they're experts because they're. Someone phrased it as they're more willing to be bored than the
Yep,
amateurs.
yep,
And I heard that, I thought, ooh, that hits hard. They're
uh-huh.
more willing to be bored. And then I think about, okay, what do I actually know anything about? And if I look at the things I know something about, did I endure boredom to get there? And then I look at the things I don't know much about. Like, I'm not a very good guitarist. I've just started, like, I've been playing for years, but I'm not very good. And then I think, well, did I endure the boredom of playing really basic things and really adding more chords to my repertoire? Have I really endured the boredom? Not so much.
Yep,
Whereas some things like mountain climbing and walking around on snowshoes for hours and hours and days, I'm really good at walking around in snowshoes. I've done that a lot, including times where the weather sucked, including times when it was just boring out when I was alone and maybe it was cloudy and not pretty and cold and wet. And I've put in that reps for snowshoeing. And now I can run down mountains in snowshoes safely, which is crazy, but I can do it. So where do we get these shirts? Where do we bumper stickers, whatever? How can we go get some of these phrases on my office wall or in my house?
so check reach out to me via my Facebook. I got a Facebook page. I got an Instagram page. Next Level Inspiration. And I'll get Brian. I'll get that to you so you can add this to your show notes. But just shoot me a message there, or you can reach out to me through my personal Facebook at D Level. Um, and that's just how I get there. Haven't got a site up yet. That's in the near future. Um, but it's just one of those things like, hey, it's been working the way it's been working. So, um, I do want to get a website up so it'll be a lot easier for people to get that. Um, but yeah, that's how you can get one.
I think about back to the basics. That belongs next to my squat rack. That belongs next to my backpack, right? There's a number of places in life, it belongs next to my toothbrush, right? A lot of places where back to the basics is actually the wisest, smartest course of action.
Yep, yep. And I got another one. Work, faith, patience.
Hmm.
I'll speak through the visual so you can have a visual of it. So you have work at the top, you have faith in the middle, and you have patience at the bottom. And it's kind of looks like a pyramid, but then and it goes and you have arrows, circling around it, symbolizing it's a cycle. But
Mm-hmm.
in order for you to, and it's just like it's a very, there's a lot more things that come to in order it comes to success, but those three things are I think are the basics that you have to just repeatedly do. You have to put the work in, and then you have to have faith in your work, and then you have to have the patience for the faith and the work to come to fruition.
Hmm.
It goes back to your time as a sword fighter, and learning that basic rap. You had to put the work in. You had to have faith in your work, but you also had to have patience. Had to have the patience that it's going to take time for the faith and the work to come into fruition.
I wasn't very patient, D. If
Yeah,
not for my teacher and also quite a few senior fighters, uh, and my teacher Avalok, senior fighters Quaz and Kenny, Jamie, a few of these people that they had patience with me, but especially my first maybe 3 years, I was not patient. I did not see the path. I just happened to luck into having the right teachers around. And then I guess I had enough diligence or something, enough stubbornness to not give up, at least not too often. But having those right coaches to go put those ideas into my head, like some of these ideas you're sharing, where I think, yeah, back to the basics, good thing to put on the wall, or work faith patience, that that it doesn't matter how much faith you have and how much work you put in. If you're not willing to go have the patience, those aren't going to get you long-term results,
Yeah,
is what I think of when you say that. Like, I need to be reminded about that occasionally.
yeah, and I mean, if you're not willing to put the work in, I mean, or if like just do this, you put all the work in, but you have no faith in what the work you're putting in, like the work is useless.
Mm.
But this, Brian, I'm glad we hopped on this call because now I'm like, all right, what's another way outside of like the t-shirt I can get the message out there? So I'm looking into it tonight. I'm going to look into creating like posters that you can hang up and put in a picture frame and things like that. Cause I mean, I've got the designs already. So,
Yeah, Jocko does a thing with some other company where they make high quality prints of his artwork, including even engraved in metal.
oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you really want to, you can have a 2 by 4 foot, all your excuses are lies, staring you in the face on your ceiling when you wake up in the morning of your bedroom. If you wanted to, like, you could just have as much Jocko in your life as you want to. So I'm excited, D, for the next level of what you're doing here. And folks, for following D, it's DEE, and then level is spelled Leavell. And that's where to find D on social media. D, thank you so much for being back on the show.
No problem. It's a pleasure. I truly appreciate it.